Okay, thank you very much, Robin. So my name's Mary. I am based at the Wellcome Trust funded overseas unit in Vietnam. I've been there for 17 years. My background is as an entomologist, so a scientist researching transmission of malaria and dengue. And I have made a transition over the past couple of decades into doing primarily public engagement. So I'm going to do a very quick overview. It's not that quick, but an overview of what we've been doing in Vietnam. And this isn't in any way meant to be prescriptive. In fact, I hope what you take away from it is that you can do more or less anything if it fits with the audience. So just a little bit of our history. We had our first International Engagement Award in 2009 and really started activities at a very small scale about then. We've had mainly Wellcome Trust funding, although we have had some corporate funding for our science theatre work, which has its own complexities. In 2015, we were awarded a Provisions for Public Engagement Award, which has allowed us to make a 5-year plan, develop a more strategic view of our engagement. It's allowed us to have long-term staff involved with engagement, but also to try things. And if they don't work the first time, we have the luxury of tweaking them and trying them again. So let me carry on. So Robin's asked me just to give a brief introduction to what is engagement. And this comes with a caveat as in it can be many, many things. So if I don't cover what engagement is as far as what you are concerned, it's not that I'm wrong, you're right. I think it covers many things that we want it to be. But in essence, it's about creating opportunities for dialogue, which in very nature is two-way. And so this involves listening on both parts. There's a couple of definitions that I've liked. So this is from the Higher Education Funding Council in the UK. And they say engagement is the involvement of specialists in listening to and developing their understanding of and interacting with non-specialists. That's one definition. The National Coordinating Centre for Public Engagement in the UK, slightly longer, but they say public engagement describes the myriad of ways in which the activity and benefits of higher education and research can be shared with the public. Engagement is by definition a two-way process involving interaction and listening, I think that's crucial, with the goal of generating mutual benefit. Other names: community engagement, public participation, citizen science, civic involvement. Back in 2009, when I joined my first of these workshops, or 2010, I spent the whole workshop getting very worked out as to whether it was community engagement or public engagement. It probably doesn't matter. However, what it is more than consultation. So in the past, certainly in governments, they pat themselves on the back that they're involving the public in consultation. But engagement has to be more than that, because the actual decision-making at the end needs to also involve the public. Okay, a very potted history of public engagement. I'm not going to do justice to it. But back in the 1960s, in society, there was a move for what we call civic involvement, both in politics and in decision-making in society. And this is a model here from Sherry Arnstein, who published this in 1969, about what she calls the ladder of participation. And at the very bottom, there's manipulation or therapy, where the public or the communities involved don't have any power. And then working up to informing. Maybe this is sort of more in the public of the health education, consultation. And very critically, she says that this holds a degree of tokenism, that it really isn't participation. And then right of the way up to what she calls citizen control. So the development sector have been a few decades ahead of us in science, And they have moved to using what they call participatory action research, where the communities themselves become the agent for change. In science, it's taken a little bit longer for us to catch up. In the USA, with the HIV epidemic, there was it led to a rise in community activists themselves pushing the research agenda, and this is really perhaps sort of the first time that we've seen the community driving the research agenda. In the UK, in the 1980s and 90s, there were a few incidences, in particular the BSE, the mad cow disease, and also Wakefield vaccination scandal, which led the government to recognize that there was a lack of trust from the public in the scientific community. And on the part of the scientific community, a lack of understanding in what the public's concerns and priorities were. And see if I can get here, and I'm just going to quote, that there was a third report from the UK House of Lords Committee on Science and Technology, and they argued that, so they put out a formal call that there needed to be more public engagement with science, who argued that the public confidence in science and policy based on science has been eroded in the past few years, and there is a new humility on the part of science itself in the face of public attitudes, and a new assertiveness on the part of the public. And that call from the House of Lords didn't come out until 1999. So this has been relatively recent, this call for scientists to get involved, with communicating engaging with the public. So why do we do it? And there was a question here earlier. I think there's two main values that drive engagement, and one is the intrinsic value in that it feels right to do it. It's ethical to involve communities who both might benefit from our research or who take part in research and science. There's also the instrumental value for it. If when we're doing engagement around, or it's going to try and inform policy and practice, then policy and practice is going to be more appropriate if we've involved the communities or the public who are going to benefit for that. And then also in research, informing the priorities, improving study design, improving acceptability of research. So objectives, informing, inspiring the public, consulting, listening to public views, and also this collaboration. And there are many definitions. I think it's appropriate that many of us are funded by the Trust, and you'll be writing grant applications. So I don't know if these are still up there, but these 3 definitions of the types of engagement are quite useful. So they have what they call this must-do engagement, which is essential for research to take place. So both in the recruitment, the retention of participants in research, and also that which is essential for getting your ethical approval. So this might be consulting an advisory board, setting up long-standing community advisory boards, improving your consent or information sheets that go out with clinical trials. And then the second category is the smart to do category of engagement. Which is useful for research, that informs the research that we're doing, strengthens the researchers' capacity themselves to do the engagement. And then, and I think that really builds the trust between a community and the researchers, enabling the researchers to engage with the public. And then at the end, this wise to do. And I like to think that this is a way of improving what we call scientific literacy in the public, just giving them some of the vocabulary to be able to have these conversations with scientists, or read something in the media and be able to put it into the context into the right context. So those are the definitions. In terms of spectrum, it really depends on the audience and who you're trying to reach with engagements, and the methods that you choose are going to depend on whether you're trying to reach a big audience in the general public, right down to the communities or the actual individuals who are taking part in a research project. And these communities, these groups are not neatly defined. And in fact, sometimes we find ourselves as either the PE practitioners or the researchers that we might be part of those communities. And the type of engagement that you do has to depend on the context. So very briefly, the context of where we are in Vietnam. This is a picture of Southeast Asia. The stars are, so down here in the sort of in the middle, that's Ho Chi Minh City, where our main OCRU, Oxford University Clinical Research Unit, is based, and we have sister units in Kathmandu, Hanoi, and in Jakarta. And each one of these red dots represents 100,000 people. And that circle, which you can move it around a bit, and anywhere within that circle is half the world's population. So that's a 4-hour flight in there. So this is a very, very highly populated, very quickly developing area of the world, and that's the context where we are. Ho Chi Minh City, it's a city of between 10 and 12 million people. It's busy, it's bustling, it's developing very fast. Our hospital that we're based in is a 500-bed tertiary referral hospital, and the catchment area for that hospital for infectious diseases is 40 million people. So it's southern Vietnam. So within that context, who is our community? And this is quite different from, say, some of the work that Baek Yong does up on the Thai-Burmese border, where more of a village, and this might be more familiar to some of you from the African situations where you have demographic surveillance sites, where your communities are quite well defined by geography. For us in Vietnam, that usually is not the case. So, spectrum of engagement, when we first started a decade ago, or no, not quite a decade ago, we struggled with this: who is our community? How do you reach people who are not coming into our hospital until they're very sick? How do you and we're working with some of these diseases that perhaps the incidence rates are 1 in 100,000. So how do you work with the community to in advance of those people getting sick? So we started with what we're calling the public engagement, the wise to do stuff. And we started really with schools engagement, science theatre, cafes, working with the media, working with journalists, and then art. And as we have developed our understanding of engagement, we've moved more into this community, what we're calling community engagement activities, which would be setting up community advisory boards to advise on research projects, using photo stories to really dialogue with a few individuals at a time, participatory theatre and arts, and community meetings. And you'll see that theatre in both. And I'll talk a little bit in the next couple of slides about how there in both of these methods, you want to call it that, there is a spectrum of how we can use theatre and how we can use art. So if I go to some of this, what we're calling the public engagement, I'm not going to do justice to our schools work because it's a massive part of our program. It's led by Tan, who's here, and I know he's talking tomorrow or the next day. But really what we're trying to do with our schools work is build opportunities for this informal science learning, so outside of the classroom, and also building capacity for the teachers, because Tan and his team, they cannot be there all the time and they cannot be there in every school. So how are we going to build more fun and participatory science into schools? Really has to be through working with the teachers. And they've done a number of activities, including science clubs, providing opportunities for interacting with scientists themselves, which I think is really valuable for children. Some of this has been online. You might have heard of it started in the UK, but a project called I'm a Scientist, Get Me Out of Here, which is an online platform for children to meet with or to ask questions of scientists. So we've run a year and a half of that, and it's worked very well. We've also worked with a children's magazine, which has a readership of about 60,000, or it sells about 60,000 copies a week. And every week, the schools team, working with scientists both from our unit and outside, produce a science page. And they're trying to cover a whole range of things, not just the health sciences, which is what we work on. Once a month, there's a page which is called Ask the Scientists. So we collect email questions over the month, and then there's a group of 4 or 5 scientists who get together to answer those, or some of the questions that are coming up. So, science theatre. This was one of our very first activities that we did, and we use a comedy drama very akin to the British model of pantomime, which is it's comedy. It's a little bit interactive. The actors get down in the audience. It's loud. It's fun, and trying to engage young people with science and health issues. So we've got 3 scripts. The third is about to start touring. We've had a script on enteric disease and antibiotic resistance, on dengue transmission, and then the current one is much more on issues that we feel that children can take control of themselves. So hand washing, healthy eating. So there's obesity is becoming a problem in children, and nutrition, hand washing, and brushing your teeth. And this is high impact in terms of numbers. Whether it's high impact in terms of learning, that's another matter. But over the past 4 or 5 years, we've been able to take it around about 130 schools, which is estimated that it's been watched by probably over 100,000 kids, plus all the parents and teachers who hang around. It's been on national TV a couple of times. But also what we do is we have it filmed by a professional film company, and we give out DVDs that we're hoping health clinics and schools can continue to play. Just some pictures. The kids love it. It's fun, and we enjoy it too. So as I said, theatre, there's a spectrum of the way that you can use theatre. And on one end, there's observation. The audience is passive, they observe, and this can be used more for sort of health education or passing on information. And so our example would be our science, the science theatre that I just talked to you about. And then there's more of a community theatre, and we'll show you a film of this. In fact, we're only just starting this, so this is a project that Paekyong and her group in Cambodia have used, where the community get involved with the theatre itself. And then at the other end of the spectrum of participation is something is a type of theatre that's called forum theatre, that's really came out of a movement of activists and this making the community, giving the community an opportunity to become the agents of change themselves. So this was developed by a man called Bowell in Brazil. Is that right? In the 1960s as an action research tool. So I'm going to take a break from talking. If Jeremy can help get a film up. So this is, if there's questions, this is Paekyong's project.
Countries in Southeast Asia are working towards elimination of falciparum malaria. In Cambodia, malaria is in decline, but malaria parasites resistant to most treatment have emerged. rapid elimination is now a matter of urgency. In Western Cambodia, most malaria infections occur in rural areas, among people working in forests. An existing village malaria worker program provides early free diagnosis and treatment. Unfortunately, the people at most risk of malaria are also the hardest to reach with health services and health education. In the Battambang province, health authorities, in partnership with the Mahidol Oxford Tropical Medicine Research Program, have organized a series of drama and music workshops in 20 villages. These are remote villages of a few hundred people with very little infrastructure or modern entertainment. The message of the drama and the songs is to encourage people to get early diagnosis and treatment from the village malaria workers, to prevent mosquito bites by using insecticide-treated nets, and to raise awareness about the risk of malaria in local forests. We chose drama as a means of communication and education because traditional Cambodian drama is popular in rural communities and it attracts very large audiences. It is fun, gets the villagers involved and appeals to people who might otherwise not receive health education.
The way that we collect the people to involve with our project can provide information on the malaria elimination and malaria spreading and signs and symptoms of malaria, and how to find out the way to go to take blood for checking malaria parasite. This is the way that we do the drama activity in the community. Have set up the meeting with the PhD, the Provincial Health Department at Battambang, to let them know about the purpose of our drama.
In each village, meetings are held with the community leaders, local staff and local schools. During the two-day workshops, people contribute their stories, knowledge and performance talents. Local children and young people are encouraged to participate in the drama and songs about malaria. On the third evening, a show is performed in front of the entire village, involving songs and acting by local people. These 3-hour-long shows attract between 300 and 600 people, which is nearly the entire village. Many come to see their friends and family perform, enjoy the evening, and learn about malaria.
Okay, my last sort of on the public engagement side is using art for engagement. And what I love about working with artists is they have a way of looking at the same topic, but in a completely different light and giving a different commentary on it. And I've been asked before, what sort of remit do I give an artist to work on something? And that is completely not the point in that apart from a deadline, nothing at all, because as soon as I would start trying to give them a remit or trying to give them instructions on what they're meant to produce, then they become illustrators and not artists. So we've had a few projects working with artists on topics both of animal, on zoonosis, so diseases that spread from humans to animals, and then more recently on the way that we interact with nature and bacteria and antimicrobials. So another project, we've worked with a photographer who in Jakarta, and she's been visiting some of these remote areas where malaria is a problem, and she's trying to illustrate what she's calling the hidden faces of malaria, the human side of these numbers that we see when malaria is reported. And then art can be used as a participatory method for engagement. So Lena Boyes, an artist who we've worked with on a number of projects, has worked in Kathmandu in an area where waterborne diseases is a big problem, to work with a group of women about their relationship with water, and in particular using these water spouts which have religious significance. And they themselves produced art pieces and then held an exhibition in their community, their community the people in the community could come in and look at their art pieces. But it was really as an expression from the women themselves of what they understood about water and their relationship with water. And then in Vietnam, we've used art as a means of engaging children. We've run some weekend workshops where we've had a theme, and one of them was just microscopes, as somebody was saying this morning that people just love looking down a microscope and seeing things for themselves. But we brought in some artists who then helped them sketch and draw what they were seeing down the microscope. So that's another way of using art. So then the last part of my talk is about some of the things where we've really narrowed down our engagement to work with communities who we are directly researching with. And we have a project called Health in the Backyard, which was engaging with some farmers who are part of a group of 2,000 farmers and people who handle meat, which is a cohort that were followed up over 5 years for a big research project looking at zoonosis, this transmission of diseases from animals to humans. And in order to really zoom in on what the community themselves felt were these risks for handling meat and animals, we made photo stories, or they made photo stories. And I'm just going to show you another little film which will describe both the methods and some of these stories.
extremes.
Tôi rất thích lấy những phần thịt tự tay mình lấy, vì mình biết phần nào ngon, những con heo nào mạnh. Vì khi ra đầu tôi có thể thấy được con heo có chích thuốc hay không. Nếu con heo có chích thuốc thì ngay miếng trên đầu sẽ có một đốm vàng và chúng tôi không ăn. Vì chúng tôi đâu biết con heo đó được chích ngừa hay là bị bệnh.
Thấy sợ, nhưng tôi không biết bị tại sao. Từ lúc bắt đầu làm heo tôi cảm thấy dơ. Khi làm tôi tiếp xúc trực tiếp nên không biết heo có bị bệnh hay không. Tôi sợ bị lây bệnh có thể gây tử vong, không ai lo cho vợ con của tôi.
Đến nay là 33 năm rồi tôi cắt củ vịt không à. Tôi biết tội lỗi vậy lắm. Cắt củ vịt là cắt củ người ta đấy. Nhưng mà tôi nghèo khổ, hoàn cảnh gia đình khó khăn. Việc tôi cũng phải làm kiếm sinh sống hàng ngày.
2002 cũng như là bị cúm đợt đầu đó, là ta sợ người ta không có dám ăn. Người ta với thú y á, lại nhà người ta lấy không chôn dục bỏ. Thấy vậy người ta sợ, người ta mới bán như ghẻ con 10.000. Rồi tôi thấy gì tôi mua tôi ăn rồi thời gian sau tôi thấy bả thấy tôi ăn là không có bị cúm bị gì kia thì mấy ả cũng ăn theo luôn. Tôi thấy ghẻ ăn ngày con vậy đó. Rồi nhiều mấy bà thấy vậy bả ghẻ rồi bả không bán nữa để dành ăn, không có sợ.
Người ta vận chuyển về tới cho mình đó là vận chuyển trong cái lồng nhỏ, sau mình mới về tới nhà rồi mình sang ra cái lồng lớn cho nó khỏe. Mà trước khi mà đổ ra cái lồng lớn mình phải để nước đá vô, tại chuột nó khoái uống nước đá lắm nha, chuột Việt kiều á.
Chuột nó thiên nhiên mà cho cá ăn không có bị chất độc. Chuột nó ăn lúa non, cỏ non, tôi nghĩ là nó không có cái chất độc hại cho cá. Khi tôi làm chuột là kéo á, là tôi không có bị cắt vô tay. Mà con cái tôi bắt chuột là chuột nó quay đầu lên nó cắn tay tôi là tùm lum hết trơn. Lúc mà nó mới quay đầu lại cắn là rất là đau. Rồi tôi mới xử lý cái tay tôi là đang mà lấy băng keo cá nhân đó. Tôi xử lý cho hết chảy máu. Rồi tôi rửa tay rồi tôi tiếp tục bằng chuột.
Mọi người thì đều thấy cũng an toàn, chưa có ai mà nghĩ về cái chuyện nguy cơ từ chuột. Nào giờ có nghe tuyên truyền thì cúm gạ dịch như H5N1 rồi thôi, còn chuột thì không nghe.
Hồi lúc mình chăn nuôi tới giờ nói chung là không có gì ảnh hưởng tới sức khỏe của gia đình mình hết. Mình rất tự tin là không sợ nguy cơ hay là dịch bệnh gì xảy ra cho nên vừa rồi nhà đám giỗ thì tự ở nhà làm luôn. Thì làm xong rồi mình sẽ vệ sinh tay sạch sẽ lại thì bình thường không có gì hết. Ngay cái đợt tay xanh thì lở mồm long móng đó thì heo mình có chích ngừa, với lại cũng có ngừa bị bệnh đó, mà nó không có bị bệnh đó. Mình nuôi hoài không có giá, chợ nó không có mua. Nuôi hoài mà heo nó bự mà bán không được giá nữa. Cái thôi quá bự giống như con bò vậy, cái thôi bán rẻ. Rồi phải mua heo con khác thả vô nuôi lại. Cái đợt đó cái nuôi lại cái nó bị bệnh giống như nó sốt lên, cái nó nổi đỏ cái nó chết, giống như nó chưa có chết mà nó ngáp vậy đó. Cái kêu chệch lại bán rẻ. Rồi còn mấy con nhỏ thì mình kêu người ta mua gì người ta quay người ta bán.
I could talk for a whole day on the way that we can use community-led media. And you saw some of those pictures in their stories. Actually, the photos themselves, they're not very good. They're blurred. They don't really show anything. But the process of involving the community in that, in telling their stories, is of great benefit to them to think through some of these these issues. And the way that we used the photo stories for this project was back with that community. However, if you're trying to use community-led media to influence policy, you might want your films to be a bit more polished than that. So there's a spectrum of how you can use them or why you might use this as a method. So for us, we took those stories back to the communities. We screened them with the farmers themselves. If they're happy with them, we took them to a wider community. And we had facilitated discussions around zoonotic health. And then based on those discussions, we ran training workshops, and in fact, we're still doing this with both the veterinary officers and the farming communities themselves. And it's also, we're trying to get them out there in the public as well, in through a website and other media, through media. So another way of directly involving communities who might be involved with your research are bringing together groups who might represent your community, and this might be on an ongoing basis, and this is something that I know that Kim and Paekyong have done for a long time with the groups on the Thai-Burmese border, and they're having these long-standing community advisory boards who help look at the research agendas and also bring in a community perspective. The bottom picture here is of a recent focus group discussion that Hung and another one of our researchers has done with a group of ethnic minority women about the uptake of vaccines. And interestingly, the first couple of times they did this, they had really struggled to get people to talk. And so this last time they've done, they just took pictures back and a lot of visual aids, and the women were much more ready to talk around the pictures. But then this was bringing in a community perspective onto a research topic. I'm going to wind up, actually. So the project that we've done with patients who have, as a result of their diseases, long-term brain or long-term sequelae. And what the question was, after they leave hospital, how do they fare back in the community? So we ran a project called Beyond the Hospital, where we used a number of different methods to consult both with the patients, with their families after they went home, but also healthcare workers about how they communicated with them. And from those discussions built some material, some of which I have over here. I've only got single copies of things, so don't take it away, but we've developed resources that now healthcare workers can give to patients as they go home, because unlike, say, perhaps, or the UK, I don't know about other contexts, where there might be an occupational therapist and a physiotherapist who works with people before they go home, there isn't that. And healthcare workers themselves were feeling pretty helpless in sending somebody out of the door to an unknown home situation. So what we're trying to do is empower both the healthcare workers in their support of the patients and in the long term improving health outcomes. And then finally, what we're calling capacity building. So I think what we've recognized is within our team, there's only so much that we can do, but there's a lot of people who are meeting the community on a day-to-day basis. So this might be the doctors and nurses, this might be district level vet officers, or it might even be the scientists. And so what we've started to do, and we're running over the next 3 or 4 years, is a capacity building program where we try and identify who are those on the front line and how can we support them. So we've been doing needs assessments through a number of different ways. We've used forum theatre to try and understand some of the issues that healthcare workers have when they are communicating with patients. We've used focus groups, meetings with at a management level. You're not meant to read this. This was just to illustrate some of the complexities that have come out of these needs assessments. This was based on a number of interactions with healthcare workers about what their challenges are. So knowledge is skills, resources, implementation. That's outside of our remit to help that, but what we can do is help them with the communication and their own emotions, because it's very stressful for them dealing with patients who are sick, who are dying. How do you break the bad news that somebody's not actually going to get better? And so what we're developing now is training for a range of these frontline workers. Some of the training needs that they've identified are here. Just to point out at the bottom, in that we're really pushing our researchers to identify who their communities are. And Hung, who's here now, is sort of leading on our what we're calling researcher-led engagement, where researchers can, and we're giving them small seed awards, a little bit of money to develop engagement themselves, and we're trying to support them in that, in both training on how do you lead focus groups, but how do you also write. So we've got an editor who comes in and helps with teaching them how to write as well. And thank you, and a big acknowledgement to a big team back in Vietnam and Nepal as well. So, thank you.